Hello, and welcome to Nocimed online tutorials. Today's presentation is on the Voxel plan. The voxel is the three-dimensional volume in the lumbar disc that will be the target for the spectroscopy acquisition. Voxel planning requires planning the sagittal and coronal localizers, drawing the voxel, positioning the shim volume over the voxel validation, and the single voxel spectroscopy or SVS sequence. The Nociscan-LS exam begins with patient registration. Be sure to use the referring physician name identified during site installation. The patient may be registered either head first or feet first. From the study library, identify the Nociscan-LS exam protocol. The body part shall be L-spine or lumbar spine. The first sequence in the exam is a generic three-plane localizer. The second sequence is the Nociscan localizer, which is a 9-slice sagittal plane localizer that has been optimized to enhance the contrast between the boundary of a gray lumbar disc and a dark vertebral body. Using the center sagittal slice of the first localizer, locate the L5S1 disc and count up to the L3-L4 disc. Center the field of view of the Nociscan localizer slice plan over the L3-L4 disc and align it perpendicular to the spine in the coronal plane. There is no need to plan in the axial plane of the first localizer. When ready, start the Nociscan localizer. A SEG T2 sequence follows the Nociscan localizer and is used to provide images for the Nociscan-LS report. It should not be used for voxel planning. While the SEG T2 sequence is being acquired, display the center slice of the Nociscan localizer, then select the coronal localizer L5S1 sequence. In the sagittal plane, the coronal localizer field of view should be centered in and perpendicular to the disc. Upon completion of the SEG2 sequence, the coronal localizer L5S1 will be run. While the coronal localizer is being acquired, select the Nociscan-LS SVS L5S1 sequence. A white rectangular icon, the voxel, and a green rectangular icon, the adjustment volume, shall appear. It is important that the disc level of the coronal localizer and associated SVS sequence match the anatomical disc level. A Nociscan-LS exam requires a minimum of 3 discs, which should be indicated on the Nociscan-LS prescription and acquired using a bottom-to-top sequence. It is recommended that sequences for unprescribed levels be removed from the exam. While the initial coronal localizer is being acquired, you may initially position the voxel so that it is parallel to and seated on the lower vertebral end plate with no visible gap. When the coronal localizer is completed and displayed in the center window, select the center slice and seat the voxel on the lower end plate and center it. Increase the right to left dimension if it is possible to do so without crossing the end plate. In the sagittal window, observe all the slices where the voxel wall is solid, or where the voxel exists, and confirm that the voxel does not cross into the lower end plate. Increase the voxel height, if possible, to maintain an approximate 1 millimeter gap between the voxel and upper end plate. Confirm this by again examining all of the slices where the voxel wall is solid. Having confirmed that the voxel dimensions have been optimized by examining all sagittal and coronal slices, center the green adjustment box over the voxel. The minimum adjustment box dimensions should be 10 mm by 20 mm by 20 mm. With the adjustment volume in position, start the single voxel spectroscopy, or SVS, sequence. The SVS sequence begins with a shimming process to improve the quality of the acquisition. At the end of the shimming, a confirm frequency adjustment window is displayed. The figure of merit is the full width half max value displayed in the upper right window. This value is in Hertz and should be less than 30 for a 1.5 T machine and less than 50 for a 3 T. If this criteria cannot be met, open the SVS sequence and increase the adjustment head-foot dimension by 1 millimeter and repeat the sequence. After several seconds, the initial unsuppressed water spectra will be displayed in the inline view window. Observe the indicated region to the right of the water peak. This region must be absolutely flat. If the voxel has crossed into the end plate, a lipid signal will appear here as a bump. If lipid is seen, stop the sequence, open it, and adjust the suspect voxel dimension, but do not touch or move the adjustment volume. Doing so will require repeating the shim. While the first SVS sequence is being acquired, you may select the coronal localizer L4-L5 and plan it on the sagittal slice. You may also select the SVS L4-L5 sequence to display the voxel and adjustment icons. At the end of the SVS sequence, the next coronal localizer will be launched. When the new coronal localizer appears, repeat the voxel optimization process and start the SVS acquisition. If a lipid signal appears in the initial voxel validation and can't be removed after a second validation, then it is possible that the patient has moved and the Nociscan-LS localizer will have to be rerun. When the sagittal window is updated with the new localizer, observe if the voxel has moved, which indicates patient motion. Reposition the voxel and adjustment volumes and repeat the SVS sequence. In acquisitions with large voxel volumes and a validated voxel, i.e. no lipids seen in the inline view, a small bump may appear to rise from the noise floor at the immediate right of the water peak. This is proteoglycan, or PG, which should not be confused with lipid, which exists in the vertebral end plates. The final images here show the voxel optimization and validation for the L4-L5 disc. Increasing voxel volume increases the quality of the acquisition and subsequent robustness of the nosogram report. The primary challenge presented by voxel planning will be preventing lipid contamination while maximizing voxel volume. Please read the Nociscan-LS Exam instructions for use for additional examples of lipid contamination. Please contact your Nosomed field engineer for any additional information. Thank you.